Hello everyone, my name is Michelle, and today we're going to be talking about types of natural selection, including stabilizing selection, directional selection, and diversifying or disruptive selection. So let's get started. So our first type of selection is stabilizing selection. Stabilizing selection is when the environment is going to select for the average phenotype. So the average or the medium. And remember that the environment selecting for something means that the environmental conditions are favoring one type of phenotype. So for example, let's say if we had 3 different phenotypes in a population. We have a short phenotype, a medium phenotype, and a tall phenotype. In stabilizing selection, what's going to happen is the environment is going to favor the medium phenotype. And as these medium phenotype organisms survive, they can pass on their medium genes onto their offspring. And the way that's going to look in the graph is sort of like this. Notice that on the two extremes, there is going to be less frequency of organisms. And we're going to have the highest frequency of organisms with the medium or average phenotype. Next, let's move on to directional selection. What happens in directional selection is the environment is going to select for either one of the extremes. So one extreme. And so back to our example with organism height, we have our short, medium, and tall organisms in a population. And in directional selection, the environment is going to favor either the tall organisms or it's going to favor the short organisms. And the big thing about directional selection is it's going to favor either tall or short, not both. So let's see how that's going to look on a graph. So in an example, if the environment's going to favor for the tall organisms, our graph is going to look like this. See how the graph is leaning towards this direction, which means that the organisms are going to be taller. So that's one possible graph for directional selection. And the other possible graph for directional selection is this purple graph, which is going in the other direction. And we can see that the environment's going to be favoring the shorter organisms. So our final type of natural selection is diversifying or disruptive selection. Now these two terms mean the same thing, but I'm just going to say disruptive selection. So in disruptive selection, the environment is going to be selecting for not the average, which also means both of the extremes. So in our example of a short, medium, and tall, the environment is not going to select for medium phenotype organisms, and it's going to select for short and tall organisms. And what that's going to look like in our graph is we're going to have a greater population on both ends and less in the middle. Notice how there is a low frequency of organisms in the middle, which is the average phenotype. And now, something special about disruptive selection and how it's different from the other types of natural selection is that this is actually how one population, which is one group of a species in an area, this is how it diverges into two different species. So again, back to our example, we had a population of some short phenotype organisms, some medium phenotype organisms, and some tall phenotype organisms. But through natural selection, through disruptive selection, there becomes less medium organisms, right? That's disruptive selection. And there's a bigger difference between the short organisms and the tall organisms. And because of this difference, they become two different species, which are the two big lumps you see in the graph. So that is all I have for this lesson. If you have any questions, concerns, comments about this video, you can drop them in the comments or contact me at tutortlemhu@gmail.com, which is in the description. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you learned something. Have a great day.